Welcome. Everyone hear me? Yep. All right, welcome to the first career mode. Thank you very much for coming. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jarrod Farquhar-Nicol. I run Pizza and Pixels these days, which is a game developer meetup in Canberra, which most of you go to. But there are some unfamiliar faces, I think. And this is something that has been a while coming, but this is the first one we've just launched. So, as it says, the business of making video games. And tonight's topic is marketing. I'll introduce our laptop friend and other physical friends in a moment. But to start with, we're just going to have a quick talk from Todd Wright, marketing expert and co-director of Threesides marketing here in Canberra. Todd.
Stop. Never clap out the start. If it's shit, you'll feel like you've got ripped off. My name's Todd and I run Threesides Marketing, a Canberra-based digital marketing agency. We focus on marketing that gets results. We get rid of all the stuff that doesn't. We just don't have time for it. And we work with companies that can need planning, implementation and evaluation of their marketing. What do you need? Is the first question that I have to start with when speaking to somebody new. Am I advertising to you right now? Well, not really, because advertising means that I potentially don't know you, and clearly we're the best of friends after the last 36 seconds. The process of pitching is right up there with the process of public speaking for most people. Stand up there and just go, I just tell them the last thing that I've done, and if they go, how's business? I'll just say it's really great and I'm really busy, or should I lie to them and say it's really slow and I need your money, please buy what I have to sell? There's a lot of loaded questions in marketing, but the most important question that you'll ever get asked and the answer that you'll ever give is, what do you do? So what do you do? Or what's your business? Or what's your product? Because it's the instant opportunity to cut through the fluff, find out what they really need and sell to them. Selling sucks. This is what Tim looks after, find more clients. He's the salesman extraordinaire, but marketing is pure. Marketing is pure. It's the process of finding and keeping customers. It's the attraction part, and then sales is the conversion part. Well, if you don't have both, you might as well have neither. I'm really interested to see, I said to Jarrod, if we were going to do this tonight, it's not about me selling or marketing or anything like that. I'm really interested to see some people that might be keen to test it. Has anyone just nailed their pitch? 15 seconds, tell me exactly what you do, how it's going to solve my problems, and why I should spend money with you. Can anyone any volunteers right now? I do have names if I don't get volunteers.
There's no names, I've tagged a few people. So.
Okay, all right, great, excellent. So my first volunteer is Callum. Callum, Price is Right style. Come on down, Callum, literally, come on down. Yeah, now you can clap, Price is Right. Callum's also always wanted to be on Price is Right, and I've always wanted to be Larry Emder. So this is where I hand over, Callum.
So just pitch my game?
No, what do you do?
Oh, I'm the lead programmer at Canberra-based indie dev company.
Just a second, yes, you're pitching again. This was a complete setup. So that's the setup question, right? So what do you do? Like, there truly is a chance to pitch a product, not just go into LinkedIn mode. This is where my presentation will start and end tonight, and I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but so often we ask, so what do you do? And we start giving them our, what we actually do and stuff. They're actually really interested in your product, and quite frankly, they're probably just interested in themselves. So how can Callum really, really quickly get it back to me, what I need, and how can he sell my product? How can he sell his product to me or market his product back? Does it sound a bit brutal? Maybe. I'm one opinion, and this is just one way to do it. But I'm going to go back there and thank you for volunteering, Callum. And hopefully, no, you're not going anywhere. Hopefully, Jarrod told you how painful it would actually be. But here, I'll hand over again. Let's go again. So, Callum, what do you do?
I work at a small company in Canberra, and we make a video game called Warden Melody of the Undergrowth. It's coming out on PC and consoles early next year, and it's a third-person 3D platformer that evokes the N64 era for a brand new generation.
Round of applause. Evokes the N64 generation for a brand new era. Was that the line?
N64 era for a brand new generation.
For a brand new generation. Do you have a star phrase in your pitch? I think that's probably his star phrase. They use this term called what's your star phrase? Politicians, right? Malcolm Turnbull, as of today, is the 21st century government. You will hear that so much and that it will become really boring, but it's a future-thinking government. It's a forward-thinking government, and we're not looking at the past. It's 21st century. And evokes N64. Who's his target market with that line? How old do you have to be to evoke that?
20 and above, really.
Yeah, 25. Like, really? I'm going to say it's 25 or maybe sort of 28 to 42. Rob, how old are you? 30. Yeah. 36. Here's smack bang in your target market. Can you ask me one question? The one question that you think that you can work out whether I'm your target market or not.
What's your favourite game of all time?
Yeah, good question. So my favourite game of all time was the one that came built into Sega Mega System 2, right? Alex Kidd. Isn't that just a classic? You didn't need cartridges, and it was just a game you could buy because your mum forgot to buy you games when you first needed to get the Sega Master System 2. Straight away, his pitch, he's explained he's a local business in Canberra, he's named his game, he's talked about, that emotional, evoking, placing me where it is. And if I said something as daggy as, Alex Kidd, well, it's probably not. It's probably Ghosts and Ghouls or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's nothing I'm saying is cool because I'm not a gamer. But what's one way that you can wrap up in this little pitch? Because we've only got 30 seconds. You're at an expo. You're at a trade stand. You've met me at a big conference or something like that. What's the one thing that you could do to wrap this up to see whether I could become a customer of yours or not? Have a quick think.
It's difficult because I don't know almost anything about either of those games, so I don't know how I'd connect them to our game. But it depends on the answer we get. A lot of the time we get answers around the N64 era or maybe one generation afterwards, and then I can kind of talk about how that connects to our game. So what are the similarities or the differences are, and how we're kind of bringing that experience to a console or a platform it's never been on before.
When's your game due out?
Early 2016.
And how much is it going to cost me?
$20.
$20. So I would probably finish with, if you've got $20 to spend and you want the best gaming experience ever, grab my details or let's swap details and make sure we keep in touch, and you need to sign me up to something for the pre-release and everything like that, right? Yeah, cool. So round of applause to Carl. I think he did very well on the spot. And no pressure on the second person that I've asked to see an example. Some of the things I really like, you may or may not have heard the term before, an elevator pitch. If you had the opportunity to go 8 floors up in an elevator with somebody that's a potential investor, and this isn't VC investment pitching or anything like that. It's literally, what can I say in the next 20 seconds that'll make them want to press the stop button or hop out of the same floor and say, actually, tell me some more about that. And you've only got about 20 seconds to talk about it. You can't have to cut the fluff, can't talk about the technical stuff, don't get into solutions, just really keep it top level, keep me interested and work out how you can convert me right now. And then marketing, if it's the process of finding and keeping customers, how can you engage me in a process to keep giving me information? Can I sign up for a pre-release, or can I get a voucher to apply, a month before everybody else? What is that little moment that you can give me to really capture me in there? Jarrod, one more person.
Yeah, sure.
You may not be friends.
Do rock, paper, scissors.
There may or may not be friends with them after this.
3, 2, 1, go.
Oh,
Double scissors. 3, 2, 1, go.
yeah, this is Alex Kidd star, right? Jenkins?
There you go.
Come on down.
Wait, will we winning the opportunity to say?
You.
Oh, you're standing up now. Go for it.
Yeah. I was about to say beard, no. Glasses, no. All right. Hey, how you going? So what do you do?
I'm a game developer in Canberra. I work on a 4-player local multiplayer game that I play every day in my office with my friends called Berserkers. It's a game where you're trying to trap everyone else with a bear so that they die and you run away. Basically, it's the old adage of you don't have to run away faster than the bear, just faster than the other guy.
Cool. How do you think you need to pitch a product to anybody, or someone else in your team is going to sell it, or where do you sit with the need to market your product?
Do I need investors? No, and I don't think. Well, we aren't that experienced. What question am I answering this one? Yeah. we haven't ever been looking for investors. We don't really see that as a great opportunity for us, nor do we think that there are many investors looking for the kind of game development we do at the scale we're doing, as far as our understanding of it. So we haven't ever pushed in that direction. But generally, marketing on a one-to-one scale outside of speaking directly to the press or gamers at conventions and stuff where you're much more prepared for this scenario and you've been doing it for 20 hours. Yeah, we're not good at it, and we're not sure exactly what we're doing with lots of the stuff. We're making trailers and things right now for our release, which is hopefully going to make that sort of like big splash and sort of thing you'd want for your game. But on a one-to-one description of our game, particularly because I haven't ever found a great way to make it appeal directly without people playing it. And normally when people play it, they get their hands on and they think it's a bit of fun, but it's a bit of a strange game to describe.
I think you did well with the whole bear thing and run away and hide and stuff like that. If you do have a product that needs to be tactile and you've got to experience it to truly understand it. One of my I guess tricks is how can you actually explain something when they're not going to get that opportunity. I like the whole evoke the N64 generation or compare it to something that is really simple. Like when you're paying your tax and you're trying to avoid it and you're running away and stuff like that. If you can find an experience in their life that they can relate to, but the most important thing I guess probably straight up front is to understand your target market really well. So understanding how can you find with just a couple of questions, how can you twist or adjust your pitch, fine tune it on the spot instantly. Where am I? Who are they? What do they need from me? And are they the sort of person that's going to be able to either buy my game, invest in my game, work with my product or anything like that? So I'm not going to get people to rate your pitch. It was quite different to Callum's. A very good style, but a round of applause. Thanks very much. Just for volunteering. To wrap up, I guess a lot of people think, if we just market anonymously and not have to ever speak to the people that we're going to sell to, or if we never have to meet them, that's heaps easier. Let's just do it on the net and hope that we get click-throughs, hope that we get video views, hope that it's just the great unwashed. But the closer that you can actually get to understand your target market and their needs, the closer you can get to understanding your motivation, their motivation to purchase from you, the better you will be at marketing, because you'll have a really clear target market and you might have a core pitch that gets tweaked 3 or 4 different ways depending on who's standing in front of me. It's like going to your pitch filing cabinet. You pull out this version for this person here, this person there. But the most important thing, I guess, for both of these pitches is to get me to think about how many people I have connected to me that can potentially spread the word about your product. I might be one sale, but I might be highly influential within my network, and I might influence 500 to 1,000 sales for you right now. So how can you capture my attention in the next 30 seconds and then use my network to link in with the people that I'm connected to? So asking those questions, getting the details, and a pitch is only the start of a conversation. You can get a business card and work out what the next opportunity to work with this person is. Then it might turn into a conversation or relationship, and you never know where it might head. But start with a simple pitch, keep it less than 30 seconds, avoid technical stuff, keep it about the product and make it fun and entertaining. You don't have to be a stand-up comedian, and I think you're probably halfway there to becoming the pitch king, and then you'll have to worry about other things to get annoyed at in your business and not marketing, because you will have nailed it. So there you go. There's a quick talk. Thanks very much, Jarrod, and good luck with career mode.
Thank you, Todd. Fantastic. Thanks, mate. All right, thanks, Todd, and thanks, guys. Berserkers and Warden Melody of the Undergrowth available via Steam Greenlight, I believe, both of them. Both greenlit. Yep, both greenlit. Go and buy them; they're great games. All right, moving on to the rest of the panel. So we've got 3 speakers with us in some form. James, thank you very much for making the time from Melbourne. So let me just do a quick. That's all right. Thanks for being with us in internet spirit. Our panelists today are James Kozanecki, there on the laptop, PR specialist at Surprise Attack Consulting. I'll get you guys to introduce yourselves a bit more thoroughly in a second. We've got Luke Plunkett, contributing editor at Kotaku, next to him. And Colin was unable to make it. He's had an emergency. He sends his apologies, and he also sends Tim Hyde, the founder of Win More Clients. So thanks, guys. Basically tonight, These guys have a whole lot of knowledge. It's up to you guys to ask questions, get it out of them. Please, I want it to be a big discussion, not just sitting and listening. If you've got questions, this is the night to ask them, get them answered. So we'll start with you, James. Do you want to just give us a minute or two about your background, just for people who don't know, so that they can sort of direct their questions a bit better?
Yeah, sure thing. So I work for Kozanecki. We are an indie games consulting agency, and we're a publisher as well. So we basically help indie developers bring their games to the marketplace. We offer like sort of PR and marketing support as well as business support. And we also operate a PR agency that kind of helps guys from overseas reach the local market. Before this, I worked for Konami on Metal Gear and Pro Evolution Soccer. And then before that, I was a journalist like Luke at GameSpot Australia.
Great, thanks. Luke?
Yeah, my name's Luke Plunkett. I'm one of the editors at Kotaku. I've been in the job for almost 9 years now. And so I guess I'm here because in those 9 years, I've seen a lot of changes in the way the kind of games we cover, the way people approach us to cover their games, and the way we cover those games. So hopefully I can help out with some questions in regards to the other side of marketing as to how that stuff's actually perceived by somebody whose job it is to actually publish stories about stuff that they find interesting or not. So.
Great, thanks. Tim?
Good stuff. I'm Tim Hyde, and I run a consultancy called Inaugural Clients, which specialises in business automation and marketing strategy. Do a lot of work with the guys at Threesides around digital strategy and digital consulting. My background is pretty wild and varied. I had my first business when I was 6. I did a circus, not 11, 18 years, many people might think. Spent 10 years in the public service, going slightly brain dead, and then after that joined Optus and EDS, doing a lot of technology and telecommunications infrastructure project management. On the side of that, never lost my passion for small business, as many as you are discovering, and co-founded and ran the Riot Act for 13 years before jumping out of that into working more in marketing.
Great, thanks. All right, so I've got a few, questions to, if people have got, the people sent me to start with, but does anyone have anything on their mind to start us off? I'll bring this mic around. Yep, great. And I might not need a vacuum between, so just pass it between you.
Hi, I'm Robbie, talking to Luke. When people contact you about you covering their games, how exactly are they doing that, and like what kind of information is best to give you?
They're contacting me any way that they possibly can. Email, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere that I've got a publicly facing sort of social media profile or a work email address or a comment section on Kotaku, wherever it is, people are using that to contact me about their game and try and pitch stuff and get some coverage for it. Some of those avenues are more successful than others, which I guess is probably something we'll get into over the course of the night. But yeah, everywhere at the moment.
Cool.
It's Luke as well. One of the first, I'm Wesley, I'm in the Lumen team. What is the first few things, there's like 4 or 5 things you look at when someone contacts you about their game? Or the first 5 things about the game that they should have for it to be eligible to be, let's say, written about or whatnot?
I'll actually say this now, this will apply to most questions. I can only speak for myself. We don't have we don't have an editorial policy. No, this is just more general. We don't have an editorial policy regarding sort of what constitutes coverage. So anything that I'll say to you guys tonight about how I approach my job or how I post things on Kotaku only applies to me. It's not going to apply to another member of staff or another website. So try and keep that in mind. That I'll answer your question to the best of my ability, but these aren't going to be like golden tickets for in terms of getting mass media coverage or something.
I think that the key to like sort of what is that everyone's really flexible in the way that you pitch. Like some people will prefer like really straight down the line, whereas others will kind of prefer like a little bit more of a media pitch along with the press release. So it's really kind of doing your research and knowing the journalist as well. Like knowing the style of article that they're going to write. Sorry, there's back in the note on that. But like knowing the style of content that they want to write, like you would never pitch a features editor at you or anything like that. So it really sort of pays to do your research on who you're actually going to be targeting and what you kind of want out of that particular beat at the same time. Whether you want news, then sort of target the news journalists. If you want previews, go after the preview guys or reviews or whatever it is.
Yeah, the most general piece of advice that I can give you is that any piece of, and I don't want to tell anyone else tonight says sure, but any sort of marketing tactics that you employ or the way you approach stuff all comes second to the game itself. Your game constitutes the majority of your pitch, because the first thing most people do is skip anything you've written and look at any YouTube trailers, GIFs, screenshots, anything like that you've provided, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for how interesting your game is and whether that's something that we want to play and write about and have a closer look at, not necessarily how you're wrapping it all up and which site you're approaching us on and stuff like that. So the quicker you can get what's cool about your game to the top of whatever it is that you're sending us is generally the most effective way to package that.
If I could add something to that, when these guys, as editors, report to a publisher or an owner of the site, and they're after one of two things. Well, they're after one thing, really. They're after more money. So if you pay for it, you're going to get coverage. Right? If you're not paying for it and you're asking for a favour and asking for free publicity, give them what they want, which is more readers. Because more readers typically goes for more advertisers, and that's going to keep the publisher happy. Right? So if it's interesting, as he says, if it's interesting content, if it's going to get an audience or build an audience, these guys will go tick that box, thank you very much. Even if they're not necessarily going to say it out loud to you.
Well, yes and no. I mean, a lot of coverage of independent games is not concerned with traffic. I mean, we can cover Metal Gear Solid and Halo and Grand Theft Auto for stories that bring in readers and advertising and whatever else. When you'll find a lot of people when they're covering independent games are doing so personally. They're like, I think this game is cool, and this is something that I want to share with the thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people that read your website, because that's just part of your job. You're not just making money writing stories, you're also just trying to share cool things and entertain people and give people something that are clicking through a website. Don't just give them the same old stuff. Give them something, hey, here's this thing that you might not have seen before, made by these guys from somewhere that you've never heard of. I think this game's cool. You might think it's cool as well. And maybe 1 million people will agree and maybe 5 people will agree. But yeah, it's not as big a deal to... I wouldn't worry about commercial viability or getting to the front page of IGN or GameSpot with the first trailer of your independent game, because that's not how this sort of coverage works.
Have more questions down there?
Hi, I'm Ricky. This is a kind of a related one. I guess, is it fair to say that those mass distribution services like PR Web and PR Mac and that they're completely pointless?
Garbage.
And just find an editor that resonates with what you want to do.
Absolutely garbage. I'm not blowing sunshine up James's ass just because I know him, but one of the reasons that Surprise Attack are doing so well is that they do provide that service of they're marketing your game for you, but they're not marketing it the traditional way necessarily. They're doing the personal approach and saying, hey, here's the trailer, here's what this game's about. They're just sort of taking the load off you. They're not just saying, hey, give us X amount of dollars and we're going to send out a press release that half the time will go to a lot of writers' junk email, because there are terms in press releases that I have set for spam, like media blast, press release, PR assets, like anything in caps like that in a subject line goes straight to my spam email.
And you're going to say all caps, Luke.
Yeah. Especially all caps are the worst. You can tell as soon as a press release has a subject line in all caps, it's going straight to bin because it's not interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Guys, I guess it's really important to kind of take into consideration, like a lot of you guys are working on quite tight budgets, so PR is going to be your main marketing activity. You're not going to have thousands of dollars to do banner ad takeovers or like really fancy social media campaigns. Everything that you have to do really has to hit hard a good way for that to work at the scale you guys are operating at is really PR. So it's really important that you have all of your ducks in a row when it comes to that. So that means having all of your communications documents like ready to rock and roll, making sure that you know what your elevator pitch is, as the gentleman, I remember his name was earlier, sort of spoke about. And then when you are ready to go out to journalists, make sure that you have a tight pitch. Someone like Luke would be getting hundreds of emails a day from indie developers. We're all aware of how many games release on the App Store every day. So it is quite a competitive market out there. So it's important that when you are ready to go out there with the PR activity, that it is as tight as it possibly can be.
Yeah, your game is the thing doing all the selling. So if you show us something that's incomplete or it's really early alpha and then it looks like garbage and you're like, well, it plays well and it's going to look better. It's like, that doesn't matter to us because it doesn't matter to the people reading. They're not personally invested in your development schedule or the potential for your project. They only care about what they can see and play either now or soon. So yeah, the better and more polished and more complete and ready to go your project is when you're pitching this stuff, the more beneficial that's going to be.
You get one first chance at a first impression. I mean, if you look at a lot of indie game marketing these days as well, and this is what we're finding in the market, we've released a bunch of indie games over the last 12 months, but it's getting really hard to keep that conversation going. It's not like AAA marketing where you can announce a AAA game 18 months to 12 months in advance to kind of keep that conversation going. Like the question that I ask a lot of teams, and I'm sure that any of the incubated guys who we've been working with lately can sort of say is like, how are you going to keep that conversation going? Like, what is your plan to keep it going? From the moment that you talk to a journalist, like officially about a game, is the moment that you kickstarted your PR campaign, and it's really difficult to keep that conversation going. So a lot of guys are opting for shorter and sweeter campaigns and having a lot more success. Like, don't necessarily go to a place like PAX for the sake of it. Like, you need to really think about what your objective is in this particular piece of marketing. Like, do I want to just purely focus on playtesting? Because that's fine. Like, don't go and talk to journalists, or go network with them, but don't try and get reviews because, or rather previews or any articles out of it. Because as I said, you get one chance. Like, Luke can, again, he can sort of like confirm that like you don't get much coverage these days. If you're lucky, you'll get one or two pieces of coverage on a game. Anything more than that, and it doesn't really happen. Yeah. So make sure that you're ready for it.
It's almost...
And do it at the right time. Don't do it when you're playtesting or if you've just been working on the game for 3 months and you're taking it to PAX for the first time.
It's almost official policy with us, and it sort of is with me, that I will generally only cover an independent game. Unless it is truly outstanding, I will generally only cover an independent game once. And that's not out of malice or some kind of artificial constraint. It's because there is such a conveyor belt coming in through my inbox and my Twitter feed and whatever of new projects and new games every day. The time in the day to circle back around to projects and cover them again when I've got newer ones coming in the door. So this is linking back to what James was saying. If a website's only going to cover your game once, then it needs to be in the best shape at the best time possible. And for me and for Kotaku especially, that's usually at or after release. Because when we're talking about the game, it's out. And the people that we're talking to, which is our audience, can go and play it and try it themselves. They're not sort of taking our word for something that may or may not actually suck because it's not out and it's not finished yet.
I think it's just to add to that, if you look at the number of, well, just a quick show of hands, how many developers in the room? Okay, a few. So if we were sitting here in terms of the pitch.
Can you give me the microphone, Jarrod, so I can actually hear it?
I've got one. Maybe it's not on.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry, Tim. I can't hear your voice.
These are recording mics.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. That's really loud. You know, if we were to go through the room right now, you know, these guys are in the same position where they're considering writing about your product, your game. You know, if you just said the number of people in the room said, I'm a developer, I work for a smaller games company in Canberra, we develop a cool game, it's kind of the same thing each time. So it very quickly becomes white noise in terms of your pitch. Right? So change it around and talk about what's in it for them. What's in it for the journalist, what's in it for the journalist reader. They want to know what's in it for them that's going to attract them about this game that they want to play it or pay attention to, even read past the first line. What's in it for them? So think about that in your pitch.
We get a lot of indie game people pitching to us all the time, and it's sort of like I have this analogy where it's like being an indie developer these days is almost like being in a rock band in Seattle in the early 90s. Like everyone's in a band, but no one has like an EP to kind of show for it. So when you are like ready to go out there and start talking about it, make sure that your build is in the best possible shape and that it is ready to be fully like flexed off, because otherwise you're just going to be, as Tim said, just more white noise amongst it, and it's the harsh reality.
I'm just wondering how many journalists actually cover games in Australia. Have you got an idea about that?
Yeah, not many.
Not many.
No, not that are writing for a larger audience.
Well, I'm talking whether it's digital or mainstream or
mainstream
in Australia.
You can count them on one hand.
Right.
Mainstream press, because that's all been syndicated to the point where one person will cover games for a multitude of, all the Fairfax papers and websites will all have their games coverage done by, one or two people.
Right. Okay. And in that context, how many?
If you look at the PAX Australian media list, for example, that has about 300 journalists on it. And if you sort of break that down, like your tier ones being GameSpot, IGN, Kotaku, and that sort of stuff, you'd be looking at a pool of about 20 journalists. If you add in YouTubers and bloggers and that sort of stuff, it extends out to a couple of hundred. And then mainstream guys, like Luke said, a lot of that stuff is syndicated by just one journalist. For example, like Fairfax has a guy in Melbourne. APN Media has a guy up in Brisbane who does all of the regional papers for them. So there's a fair few out there. You just got to go looking for them. But very few of them would have significant reach, if that was sort of the point you were getting to with your question. I think it was.
Yeah, it does lead to a second question, and that is about the importance of alternative promotions to your audience that you're seeking to sell your game, meaning a journalist might not actually be the exposure that you really need.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it'd be interesting to know your perspective on alternative publicity to audiences that are not necessarily media audiences for your games.
James might be better positioned to answer that because he might have better access to numbers from YouTubers and stuff than I do.
Yeah, look, so I mean, we put as much focus on, so we call them content creators right now. It's sort of the in vogue word, in the same way that social media was a few years ago. So content creators to us means Twitch streamers and YouTube content creators. And they are equally as important. Australia's largest YouTuber is a guy called Lachlan. He has over 1.3 million subscribers. He purely focuses on Minecraft, which presents an issue of how do you break into that sort of market. He's basically, there's not what you can do with him because he only focuses on Minecraft. Someone else like Jeff Chung, for example, is a guy who focuses on news. He's got 600,000 subs. Without giving publications data away, these guys are just sort of one-man production outfits that have incredible swing. Much more than most Australian video game websites would. There'd be a few that would beat them, but not many. They're sort of your upper level guys. The thing to take into consideration though, a lot of YouTuber numbers, I mean, when I say that Lachlan has 1.3 million subscribers or Chapchon has over 500 to 600,000, a small percentage of those are Australian. As a general rule of thumb, in the same way that you would sort of break down any market, Australia makes up a small percentage of those guys, especially when they are internationally focused as well. With the other hand, she's a YouTuber out of Canberra.
Can you just repeat that, James? We lost you for a bit.
Make a better face if you're going to storm in.
Sure. So I mean, I think there's a little lag.
There's a lot of lag.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes and no.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
I think what's important to recognise is that if you understand who your target market is that you're trying to reach, it's not just about trying to put your message through a particular channel, through a particular YouTuber, through whatever it is. The more you understand about who that market is and who these guys are reaching, the more likely you are to get cut through. It's not just about getting publicity, right? It's getting publicity in the right place in front of people who want to buy your game.
Yeah, sure.
So, James's point about the guys, following Minecraft and well, my son's incredible. He just sits there for hours after hours, watches these two English idiots talk about Minecraft. Wish he'd be doing something else, but it is what it is. And that's fantastic. But if I'm trying to reach an Australian market of 9-year-olds, I don't know how many 9-year-olds these guys reach in Australia. Okay. I'm sure they reach heaps of people in the States and heaps of people in the UK as well, probably throughout Europe. But if I'm just trying to launch my game into Australia, I want to look at where's the biggest concentration of that audience that I can try and reach either directly or through a publication.
Was your question though related, were you sort of getting towards Australian media covering an Australian game because they're both Australian?
Questions about the context of Australian journalists supporting the local developers and providing more coverage to them. I'll just finish that question before.
Providing them a little bit more courage. I understand the philosophy. I work in the film sector and I completely understand where you're coming from. But I think there is an underlying, I suppose, moral obligation, and I won't guilt you into it, but to provide that little bit of support, given the fact that you have such a tidal wave of international titles that come into Australia. I mean, even the censorship board has problems trying to get through the amount of titles that are coming into Australia. So, that philosophy of once only, I just wonder how developers really can find a cut through in competing against other titles when you've only got one chance. Does that explain what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it doesn't really impact us because we're such a global website, and video games and the video games community are such a global thing that the geographic location that a game's made in is usually irrelevant.
Yeah.
People will just play a game.
What you need to take into consideration, and this is something that you touched on, Tim, is really timing. Like right now, we're coming up to AAA season, and I think one of the most common sort of indie game marketing mistakes is it's like, well, we're not really competing in the same space as Call of Duty, so it'll be fine if we release our game alongside of a big game like that. But basically, in our experience, we've been doing this for a little while now, is anything from September through to mid-November or early December is basically a no-go for indie stuff, because although you're not directly competing against Star Wars Battlefront or Call of Duty 11 or whatever it is, you're still competing for journalist time. And I mean, if you look at the front page of Kotaku or GameSpot or IGN right now, like it's plastered with coverage for Metal Gear Solid. Gamers are very, very interested and focused on one game at a time, and a lot of these outlets really cater to that by blasting out as much coverage on they can, like whether it be top 5 tips or have you seen this crazy new move in the game or check out this bit later on. So even a couple of weeks around a big launch can be very risky because a lot of focus is still on covering these games back to front.
Yeah, I think just to sort of take that a bit further, you are also in many ways, again, depending on the market that you're trying to reach, competing for wallet share. Right, so if I go and, I've got $200 a year to go and spend on games, and I buy Metal Gear Solid for $100, I don't have much left. And if that's the game I'm playing, I'm not going to play your game. So that's a really good point you made, James.
To get back to what you were getting about Australian obligations, though. I don't personally have one because I write for a website that's basically global in Outlook. We do have an Australian site. There is an Australian Kotaku branch that's based in Sydney with an Australian-based staff anyway, and they do have an interest in Australian developers. And so someone that pitches a game to me, and for whatever reason I don't get to it, or I'm not into it, or I don't write about it, whatever, finding a more Australian-focused website can sometimes be a better way into it, because you can say, hey, we're 3 guys from Canberra, or 2 guys from Brisbane, or whatever, and that's I'll say, hey, we cover Australian games, and we like sort of helping out Australian developers. We'll take a look at this game and maybe cover it once or twice.
I think from my perspective, because it operates the same way in the film sector.
Yeah, I imagine it would be similar,
that you are competing against the Star Wars, even though you're independent, you're still playing in the same space.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter whether they've got $100 million in marketing, you've got $10, you have to compete against that, and you have to do it by innovative promotions and accessing your promotions through the best audience target you can get.
Yeah, it was
That's right, I won't need the mic, Jarrod, it's fine, everyone will hear me. I just want to talk a little bit about the value of brand recognition versus the risk of brand dilution. So we're currently making retro marble banners combined with modern Indiana Jones adventure. And people are like, holy shit, that's awesome, here's my wallet and my firstborn. But I'm sort of wondering about at what point does the risk come? People are just hearing Marble Madness and they're just thinking of that game and they're not really picking up and getting into your game and what the potential value is there.
It's actually a really good way to pitch a game. Related to back what was said during the intro, when you're pitching a game to either a journalist or somebody at a trade show, whatever, they may not be in a position or they have time to play it. If you can say, hey, my game is like Destiny meets Tetris, I can be like, okay, I like both of those things, so I suddenly now have an interest in this thing that you're talking about, even though I haven't played it. If you use that kind of tactic, it usually is effective if the games actually work together, unlike Destiny and Tetris, which don't. And also, we don't generally, and most people won't just focus on the first, they'll put the two together because that's why they're there in the first place. It's there for you to sort of make that leap and say, okay, I can't feel what this game's like now, but if you've told me those two games and I recognise them, that's fine. There's not an issue of burnout or selection of one game over the other. In fact, it's the opposite. It's actually a really good way to address a press release or an email. Instead of saying press release, you can say, hey, I've made a game that's Destiny meets Tetris, and somehow that works.
I think, being an ex-IT guy, most of you are going to be sort of IT people, there's a real risk of falling into technical speak when we do our pitch. Right? And if you're not pitching, most of your market are not technical. So if you pitch them in a technical way where you get into the detail because that's the space you're comfortable in, you'll lose them really quickly. And so if you can frame it in that context and say, here are two things you really love, we're a bit like that, right? It gives some context around what it is you're doing. If I said to everybody, what do you think accountants do? Right? Everyone goes, I know. You immediately in your mind, you just picked this accountant, haven't you? Right? You know what an accountant does, right? But if I said, I'm an accountant, astronaut, all of a sudden you've got something else that's completely different. So trying to be, if you're too same as everybody else, right, you get stereotyped with everybody else. You get ignored with everybody else. You just become, again, white noise. If you're a little bit different in how you pitch, put it in context of what you just, what was it, the two? Tetris and whatever it was, you can kind of frame yourself a little bit differently and you get curiosity as to, what do you mean by that? How do you do that? What is that? Right? And when you get that curiosity, you get buy-in, you get that next bit of conversation out.
Were you also asking about your own brand getting through the idea of those other two strong brands that you're combining?
Your actual pitch?
Yeah, well, no. At what point does brand dilution need to be something you're aware of?
Are you talking about for your...
Yeah, for the game. So the game's name is Marble Mountain, but no one remembered me saying that. Everyone just remembered me saying Marble Madness meets, Indiana Jones sort of thing. So, I mean, is there a point where you should start off with maybe that, that remembrance stuff and then move on to just push your own brand at some point?
Is your game called Marble Mountain?
Yeah.
And you're using Marble Madness to pitch it?
Yeah.
And it's Marble, and it all becomes a bit of a jumble. So maybe why people are fixating on Indiana Jones is because it doesn't have the word marble in the headline.
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is, regardless of what it might be,
it doesn't dilute it because there's nothing to take away from it. You're using those other two things to introduce something I know nothing about. If I do get to the point where I know something about your game, then the dilution is irrelevant because I don't need to worry about Indiana Jones and Marble Madness anymore. I'm only worrying about what's actually in your game. So you wouldn't describe it continually for 18 months to everyone you spoke to as that. But if that's what got your hooks into it, and then you could just refer to your game by name or by premise or setting or whatever, then...
So the initial hook stage. Like that.
You wouldn't put it on the box or on the Steam page or anything like that.
Hi guys, I used to run a gaming site back in the 90s, and I also designed and did all the marketing for a couple of games back then. We did a lot of things around building and enabling the community, and got a lot of, did a lot of work in terms of getting the community contributing to the development of the game, including in one instance we got their voice samples, used them in the game. In another sense we had them designing units, did all of that sort of thing to help with the pre-sell, and these games were commercial release, and we were selling them off the back of some of the real-time strategy games that had come out at the time, so they did reasonably well. How much is that community building aspect still a factor these days, given that we've got far more freedom to do that on the internet than we had back in the 90s?
Very much. Community is a huge part of what we do. In fact, we have we're a relatively small business, but we have one person dedicated their full-time job to sort of fostering that community. I mean, they're the guys who are really going to champion the game and kind of carry it for you. And in this day and age where social media is such a big part, the community... Beforehand, community was just a web forum, but now community can be a Facebook page, an Instagram page, the fans of a famous streamer or YouTube content creator. So they're really everywhere, and you need to be ready to kind of go to wherever the community is to engage with them and talk with them, whether that is on Instagram or a web forum, all that sort of stuff. So it is very much still a big part of how we do it. I mean, if you look at a lot of popular Kickstarter campaigns, every time that you look at the reward system, I mean, it's basically kind of trying to build a community through the rewards. It's every tier is almost a level of community interaction. It's like, do I just want the game? Do I want to have my name in the credits, or do I want to try and get my voice in the game, or something like that, or do I want to design a level that's like a really high level back a tier?
I think what you're trying to do there is really get people invested in it. Right? If someone else owns it, right? You guys develop a game and put my voice in it, I own it. Right? It's mine. I'm going to go and tell everybody about it as soon as it comes out, and that's free publicity. Right? I'm going to push it and say, oh, God, listen to this, I got in it. Right? So the more you can move people into that fan state through the community involvement, getting them part of the game, getting them contributing to the ideas through a Kickstarter,
listening to those fans, the more likely they are to get engaged with owning it and trying to spread the word of what you're doing as well. Risk, of course, is if you do things they don't like, they're more invested in it as well.
I think that's a good one to chat a bit more about. I know a lot of people around here have crowdfunded or are looking at it. Maybe, can we get a few other thoughts or tips or do-nots about marketing just around crowdfunding, and maybe Luke, I'm sure you see a lot of Kickstarters happening.
Yeah. Kickstarters are a messy one because some Kickstarters are incredibly professional games pitches that are very impressive, fronted by experienced developers, and as such I would have no problem saying, hey, this thing's looks cool. You know, maybe you guys who are reading this website should give money to it implicitly by association. Other ones are just a couple of kids and some sketches and some promises about building their own engine and some real-time MMO, FPS garbage that just never works.
There's a tip right there for you.
So in terms of, we're just really wary of Kickstarter as a whole in terms of coverage, just because it's probably been 2 or 3 years now since it really took off, and there's just been so many, not necessarily failed Kickstarters, but just disappointing, sort of unfulfilling, unfinished games that have been brought out on it, ones that have never hit their target, ones that did hit it and were rubbish. There's so few genuine sort of Kickstarter success stories that it's made a lot of people in the press a little wary of covering a Kickstarter campaign at all. That's not to say that they're an ineffective way of raising the money that you need to make a game, but in terms of a website covering a Kickstarter, it's got to be a pretty slick Kickstarter campaign. You've got to have substantial sort of assets and demos and a really concrete development plan and things like that ready to go. Otherwise, we're going to look at it and go, this is a pipe dream, it's never going to happen. And just go on to the next one.
Would it be, I'm pretty loud, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Would it be advisable to have a Kickstarter basically to create the community awareness? Like you're actually kind of on the way. A little bit of cash would help, sure, but really you're already there. Have the Kickstarter to create the online community awareness of your game.
Devil's advocate, as someone who has to read angry internet comments every day, and an angry internet commenter would take one look at that and think it was a scam. Right. They say, your game's got money, it's nearly finished anyway, what are you running a Kickstarter for? You don't need this money.
But isn't the idea of compartmentalisation appealing in that, there's safety knowing that the game's going to launch, but Kickstarter
there may be for you, but in the eyes of people who are now very seasoned and experienced in how Kickstarters work, they'd be very suspicious of that.
Right.
Because they view Kickstarter as a means of funding a game's development from start to finish.
Right.
People that come in and only look and develop small parts of a game, or say they've got publisher money and just want Kickstarter for a bit extra, people are wondering, well, why am I personally taking the risk on this for a compartmentalised part of this project if you've got a ton of money or you've completed a ton of work already from...
So you see the 7 points both ways from the middle. One saying, I'm not going to fund you from the beginning because it may not go ahead, and the other saying, I'm not going to fund you at the end because you've already begun.
They don't want to fund you.
Sure. Yeah.
It'd be a bit like someone in civic here, asking for money for a bus. Right, and then you haven't noticed there's a Rolex on their head.
Yeah.
You sort of feel a bit cheated.
Yeah, I was just going to reply over here. Like I'm in pretty much that situation now. I'm just about ready to start taking money from players, and was planning a Kickstarter, and I'm having a lot of debate about whether I want to, drive traffic to Kickstarter side or drive traffic to my site, and give Kickstarter 10%. Of the funds, as opposed to just keeping that 10% myself. If my game is playable and I can make money now, why am I put a lot of effort into, pushing people to Kickstarter? I just wanted to make that observation because I'm thinking about it a lot.
I just wanted to comment that quickly. I think setting up a Kickstarter is a lot like setting up an eBay. It's a real big shopping centre, and you've got a lot more people walking past. There's heaps of shit sold on eBay. So just being on Kickstarter, doesn't mean you're going to attract the right people, and it may not be the right outlet for you. And if you fail, was that your big crack? Have you lost your big opportunity because you went for the crowd money, but you weren't successful? Like, let's say you went Possible or something like that, and if you don't get the money you wanted, it doesn't convert. Have you actually put people off by your first outcome was a fail, or have you actually incited people to say, they didn't get there, and actually I've incited more support? So you're dancing with the devil, aren't you? I think Luke said that it was 6 1 half a dozen the other, but honestly I don't think you should ever look at Kickstarter as a marketing tool. You should look at it what it's purely designed to do, and that's being a crowdsourced funding campaign. And the marketing's the spin-off from it, but if you start by using Kickstarter as a marketing campaign, you're there for the wrong reason, I personally believe.
You won't make any money off of Kickstarter using it as a marketing tool. I've got plenty of devs, and I'm sure most of the people in this room have as well who have tried to use it. If you want to hit your Kickstarter like funding goal, you need marketing around it, and you need a shitload of it, and it's a lot of work. Have a look at if you want to see a Kickstarter campaign done well, look at Armello. It's by a Melbourne group called League of Geeks. Trent Custis, who's kind of the main guy behind Armello, worked his tits off like the whole time that was up for an entire month. It's not just a matter of putting together a couple of GIF images and a fancy video and some text to go along with it. Like, you're answering people's questions 24/7. If you're asking for a serious amount of money, like, people are going to ask you pretty in-depth and serious questions, and they're going to expect returned answers for it. So it's not just a simple way to just go out there and make a buck. People are really good these days at seeing through Kickstarter, and there's a lot of them that fail for the right reasons for that.
Okay, I know heaps of films that have gone through Kickstarter. Not necessarily Kickstarter, there's about 170 different type of crowdfunding platforms out there, and they're growing every day. But I think it's important, because I've done quite a few now, is to approach these things as if you are building an audience and a community around your project, and that you are actually building a relationship with them, that you're taking them through a journey to the end of that process. He's right about it not being just completely about a marketing tool, but building a relationship and also an audience around who you are and your studio and the actual project itself builds into the potential of getting more investment in through those crowdfunding sites. The other thing that's missing out of that is that a lot of those funds that go to the American and overseas sites, you can't claim necessarily back on your tax forms. So you need to look very carefully at how you can rebate the money that you lose through the crowdfunding sites, and also how you can leverage it with this other Australian funding institutions like the departments, government agencies and so on. Crowdfunding is not the be end and end all of it, it's only a part of it, and if it is a blue sky then that's all good, but the majority aren't.
Do you want to say anything about launching Kickstarter as well? So Ravi runs Reload, Barron Games, which a lot of you know, and a couple of Kickstarter campaigns have had launch parties there.
Yeah, we've hosted a number of them, I think 3 or 4. Tahira, for Peter, who's here, who I think ended up being the largest funded Kickstarter in the ACT. That was our first one, so it was very encouraging for us, also obviously for Peter and the Tahira crew. But we've found that it works really well for us holding events. I mean, we're a venue. And game launches are exactly spot on for us. So we're working together with the game community to sort of promote the game, at least on a local level, and it's a very symbiotic kind of relationship. We've since done Lumen and the Riddle Room, and if anybody else has got a Kickstarter on the way and wants to have a launch event, we do get quite a bit of coverage and a packed room for that launch, and our social media is gaining a bit of traction, so the message gets out to an even wider group. So keep us in mind.
I think on that too, like the panel was saying earlier, the timing of the launch for those sorts of things, like you're saying, it's suddenly there physically, the developers are there, you're all in the bar, and so doing it at the right time is key there.
Yeah, hi, I'm Peter. It was Tom and I who did the Tahira Kickstarter, and launching at Reload was fantastic, but I did just want to mention, we were talking about government funding before. One thing we found since the Kickstarter is it's a really great way For most of the grant programs, they want to know that the product you're developing has an audience, and you have to spend a lot of time trying to prove to them that there is an audience for this. Something like a Kickstarter campaign, even if it's a small one, might be very helpful for you to unlock that funding, because rather than just saying, oh, we've looked at the numbers, similar games, they've sold this, you're actually saying X amount of people have said that they're interested in your game, they've actually put money up, they already want your product. And that, from what we've seen so far, it gets a really good response from those government funding agencies.
I've got another question. We were talking before about and just then, about not launching too soon. So with social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're on, what do you guys think is it worth, if you're only going to be posting sporadically, if you're very time poor, for instance, and it's a long development of a game, should you just not post at all? If you're just going to be posting, say, every month, or just some little things, does it need to be exciting and keep people wrapped up in it? Or is it worth having a presence out there, do you think?
There are a variety of tools that you can use to schedule that stuff. TweetDeck is a really powerful free Twitter client which allows you to schedule posts, and that's a great way for time-poor people to have an ongoing Twitter presence. There are various tools out there for Instagram and Facebook which are very similar to that. I would definitely sort of
breaking up again, James, sorry.
Your campaign short. I'm sorry.
Yeah, dial back about 20 seconds. Try again.
Dial back 20 seconds. Alright. I don't remember.
Well, it's 30 now.
You said TweetDeck. There's a couple of different things like TweetDeck, Instagram that do it, that schedule it for you.
Yeah, we lost him. If you're going to a trade show, the first thing he has actually done a trade show like PAX or Gamma-Comic. Well, put your hands up.
Can you see them?
So everyone knows how busy trade shows are. To give you a thing that kind of gets thrown out the window when you're busy, lunch break, and take email addresses.
I'll jump in. We'll stop you for a second, James, while it catches up. Tim's going to have his say.
I'll jump in there for this one. Use the tools available to you. There are heaps of tools out there like TweetDeck, Hootsuite, and so on, depending on how many channels you're going to be in. Most social media platforms these days have a scheduling tool. Right? Most of them have pretty good mobile apps that you can use. Right? Use them, and it doesn't have to be big and complex. Right? And I shot a quick photo, like one line of text earlier on, and that's up on my Facebook page now with all you wonderful, happy, smiley people. So it doesn't need a great deal of overthinking. Certainly, as you get towards launch, I'd definitely recommend. I know that's a very busy time, but schedule more. You want to build momentum for your launch, and again, use the tools available to you. If you're only using Facebook as your only channel, if you're only using Twitter as the only channel, just get straight in. If you're going to be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc., 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 consider leveraging a tool like TweetDeck or Hootsuite to hit more of those channels and manage more of those channels at the same time. Right? As developers, as any small business, we've got this challenge between, to do our marketing. We've either got time or money. It's one of the two things. Right? So use whatever you can available to you to really leverage, particularly time.
I'll offer an alternative plan of action to that. So last year we made a very significant editorial shift where we decided as a website to really cut back on the amount of coverage of future projects that we'd be handling, because we basically sat back and realised this idea of this trap that video games have been in for decades, where the industry is having you continually focused on what's coming next was to the detriment of both, I hate to use the word consumers, but it's relevant to this, consumers, and the industry itself, that they were just continually dangling this carrot out in front of you that, oh, the next game's coming, here it is, and then before you even realise that it's broken or it's rubbish or whatever, you focus on the next game that's coming through preview cycles and hands-on events and trade show coverage and whatever else. And so, because that was just accepted as the norm, as the way that games are promoted and covered, as the independent scene's grown larger and more relevant in the last decade, a lot of independent developers have fallen into that trap because they just assume that that's how things are done, that I'm going to build a community, I'm going to get all this pre-release coverage, I'm going to get more Twitter followers and more Facebook likes and whatever else. And that sounds fine in theory, but larger games can leverage that stuff because they have a pre-existing fan base of millions. Your game has a pre-existing fan base when you're starting of you and your mums and your mates, and that's it. So the idea that you're going to somehow snowball this campaign of social media followers and fans of your game pre-release is almost, if your game is good enough and significant enough and does get some pre-release coverage to warrant that, then great. Otherwise, it's almost, I hate to use the term a waste of time, because it's still worth doing a bit of pre-release work, but so much of your exposure is going to come at release and immediately post-release as opposed to pre-release, because the way most of the games that you're making are going to be released is they're going to hit Steam, and the most exposure you're going to get is when you're on the new releases chart of Steam. That's when people are going to notice your game. That's when a lot of websites that may not have seen it may dig into it and say, hey, let's check out what the latest, literally, game on Steam is. It's also where most YouTubers get their stuff from. They're not usually rolling their sleeves up and getting involved in pre-release coverage. They're doing the same thing. They're looking at what's new, trying to find something cool or interesting from that list and getting it then. So instead of spending time and money and effort on pre-release stuff, you may be better served, doing a little bit of that, but then really focusing on handling that as a job at release and immediately post-release, because these days that's where most of your interest and inquiries and things like that are going to come. They're going to hit you in the first day, 2 days, week, when people are making YouTube videos and covering you on websites, because that's the first time they've seen or heard about your game, and it's the first time actual consumers are paying $10, $20 and giving you proper feedback on the finished product as well.
On that, make sure that when you are ready to go out there, make sure that you have, ideally, if you're a multiple person team, have someone dedicated to doing it, and think about the times of when you're sending it out. When I was a journalist, I don't know if they still do it now, Luke, but I would get a lot of press releases right before lunchtime, and the PR person, whoever sent it, would be like, oh, it's out before lunch, whatever, and then they go out for lunch. Be available to respond to messages quickly, because journalists want to get articles. The beauty of being an online journalist is that you can turn around articles really fast and kind of get them out there. You don't have to wait for it to go to print. Make sure that you can respond to them in an adequate time. Don't send out a press release and then go out for 3 hours or go away for the day or whatever. Be available and be ready to answer it, because once you lose that momentum, it's very difficult to get it back.
Yes. Agreed. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left, so that's when all the questions come. All right. Okay, 2 minutes.
Scarcity and urgency.
Hey guys, so one of the big questions we're wrestling with at the moment, coming up to, we're a couple of months away from release, is we're a very small team, all of our resources are dedicated to building the game itself, and we've got in contact with publishers and PR firms to look at prices and possibilities for having them handle marketing for our game. So like I said, we're very busy, and it always feels like time that we have available to work on the game is better spent making the game itself better rather than working on marketing. And on top of that, we don't have the connections and the weight behind us that a PR firm or a publisher would to make that PR push even more worthwhile. So I wanted to ask you guys, how would you value whether doing that is worth it, especially considering we're, as well as a small team, we're on a tight budget, and if we do end up doing this, we'd essentially be borrowing the money to pay for it. and that means we'd have to make sure we make that back on the release, and it ends up being long-term worthwhile. So I want to ask you guys, what are the advantages you see to that? When would you go for a PR firm, and what would you want to make sure you get out of them to make that whole experience worthwhile?
I mean, I guess the first thing is you need to really look at what they bring to the table. A publisher and a PR agency are going to bring two different things to the table. A publisher is going to have some sort of financial involvement in it. They're going to keep a percentage of your game, and they're going to be a lot more vested in it. They may also have a lot of other games on the table, so you might be another release in their sort of slate. I mean, there are pros and cons to both. Being in PR, like, I'm not a magician. I can't click my fingers and get articles on the front page of the biggest websites. Like, we still have to work hard, and you need to sort of look at where they're based and sort of what their experiences is. I mean, there's sort of a lot of factors at play, and I would sort of lean to it. I mean, we've done this with a lot of the guys internally at AIE. Doing it yourself is never a bad thing. A lot of indie developers don't necessarily find success on the first or second game. They might find it on the third or fifth. But if you pay someone to do it for you every single time, you're not necessarily growing as an indie developer. Part of the beauty of being indie is that you guys are super agile, you're super nimble, and you're sort of the jack of all trades. If you're outsourcing that to a degree, you're not growing and learning from that. So I think it's, if you are going to bring on someone else to help you out, whether that be an agency or a publisher, like that's fine. But definitely, like, take notes and learn from the experience and from what they're doing, because you'll most definitely want to be doing it again later on, unless you want to only make one game and then go do something else.
I'll add to that bit. You definitely have to market. Right? As much as you might want to jump into the game and finish it off and have the best game ever made, if nobody knows about it, they can't buy it. As a general rule, you need a couple of things for people to buy your product. The first one of those is visibility. If people do not know about your product, they cannot buy it. Right? So that's where a publisher or a PR agency can give you huge amounts of leverage, particularly if it's your first game. Because they've got industry connections, they've got reach, they've got relationships that they can leverage on. With editors, with other publications and the like. So that's always going to be an advantage on your first game. Look, ultimately, you want to be able to own the traffic. And the ones that we talked about earlier, the big game developers, they own the traffic. Right? They've moved everyone from someone else's magazine, which is traffic they can influence, through an editor, to traffic that they own, where they can talk to their people who have bought their product directly. And that's why you see people who've done 3, 4, 5 releases, 5 games, they're going to get more success on the later ones because they own the relationship with those people who bought the earlier ones. And as long as you've delivered, a valuable product and experience that those people want to repeat with your next game, they're curious about your next game because they enjoyed the last one, you're more likely to be able to get success and traction on the next ones after that. But if you keep outsourcing all of that traffic to to an agency, to a publisher, you have to go through the same process again. You have to re-win that loyalty, re-win that customer again, and that's really hard. And many of you will have heard the idea that it's much easier to sell to someone, or 10 times easier to sell to someone who's already bought your product. It actually is, right? Because they trust you, right? Which is part of the other things. They've got to like you, they've got to know who you are, and you've got to deliver a credible product that they want to do again.
Earmuffs, James. I wouldn't bother. I'd, like I said to the last response, I'd just get your game done, get it looking good, and get it out. I wouldn't worry about. I don't think anyone in this room is in a position to be worrying about spending money on contacting agencies to handle stuff for them. I think it's not going to increase the chances of anyone covering and looking at your game, because the methods of distribution and visibility on where you're selling these games, you're guaranteed a much bigger spot there just by virtue of releasing it, and the people that are going to look and cover your games are going to look at it on the day of release by virtue of that. 100 times more likely than they are from getting a press release or a tweet or something about it. So you'll greatly increase your chances of somebody covering your game naturally by making it a better game then you will try to coerce them into covering it by sending a press release or getting some pre-release coverage for it. Because you're not a name that we can trust, you're not a studio we can trust, you're not a series we can trust. There's nothing to bank on there, in terms of us thinking, hey, this is a game that might be worth looking at. So yeah, the better it is when it's actually released, the more likely you are to get coverage for it.
And that message, that information coming from a games PR firm that you trust, that wouldn't influence it at all?
James attests me to that. His email ratio to coverage ratio with me is dismal. Because and that's nothing to do with James, that's just that kind of content.
I've known him for almost a decade now, and he rarely responds to me, so...
You don't know to go to?
Like, honestly, so we pitch out to international outlets all the time. We'll send out 3,000 emails at a time, sort of thing, to all the mainstream media outlets. And a lot of big guys don't necessarily respond to you. If you're lucky, you'll see coverage in a few days' time. But it's really not uncommon. Like, Luke, how many indie game developers do you actually respond to on email?
Yeah, relay this is useful advice as well. Nobody will ever respond to you.
Respond to them, you just kind of move on.
Because if we were to respond to every independent developer that sent us a game that we weren't interested in, I wouldn't have time to do anything else, and my entire day would be spent being an arsehole to people that don't necessarily deserve someone sending them rude emails in reply. So if you send out 1,000 emails and no one replies to you, maybe that suggests that your game hasn't interested them, but don't go expecting or asking for feedback from people, because we don't have the time or the interest to write sad emails that make people upset. So.
All right, good note to wrap up on. All right, thanks, guys. We are running out of time and tape on basically tape, hard drive space. So I think we'll wrap up there. So thanks, James, Luke, and Tim. If you guys, we still have time in the night. If you all want to, hang around and mingle, talk marketing again, I don't know if you guys can...
No, I'm happy to stick around.
Yep, great. James, I'll just leave the laptop open. Yep. So he can't run away. So that's everything. Thank you for tonight. We've got a couple of announcements of things that are coming up, but I'll just go through those quickly. One of them is that... GDC in China, if anyone's not going to PAX, if they're going to be in China instead, there's a discount on the tickets ending on Wednesday. Also on Wednesday at Reload is the Makers Movement 3D printing extravaganza. Please join. Attend. On October 22nd, Reload is hosting a PAX warm-up event, which is a form of marketing, and a lot of people here I think will be there. Anyone in Canberra who's going to PAX to exhibit will be there, so invite a friend to play other people's games. And that's everything. Thank you, panelists. That's fantastic. I'm certainly a lot more informed. Thank you, everyone, for bringing your questions. Please thank our panelists.